My name is Harper Parker, and I'm about to tell you a story that started with a stranger on a plane and ended with me questioning everything I thought I knew about my own identity. I was halfway through a flight from Denver to Boston when the woman beside me started staring. Not rude staring, terrified staring. The kind of staring that makes your skin crawl because you know something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. She looked at me with this expression that seemed to mix fear, recognition, and something else I couldn't quite place, almost like she was seeing a ghost. Twice during that flight, before we even hit cruising altitude, she looked like she wanted to say something to me. Twice she stopped herself, her lips parting and then closing again, as if she was wrestling with a decision that could change everything. I pretended not to notice, keeping my eyes on my laptop, but I could feel her gaze burning into the side of my face every few minutes. At first, I assumed she thought she knew me from somewhere, maybe recognized me from social media or a local news segment. By the end of that flight, I desperately wished that had been the reason. Then right before landing, just as the captain announced our descent and passengers started putting away their laptops, she turned to me completely and asked the question that would unravel my entire life. Was your mother Linda Parker? My heart skipped a beat so hard I thought I might pass out. I said yes, barely above a whisper. The woman's hands started shaking, visibly trembling as she reached into her purse with this careful, deliberate slowness. Then she pulled out an old photograph. A newborn baby wrapped in a yellow blanket, looking peaceful and perfect. A woman stood beside the crib crying, actual tears streaming down her face, and that baby looked exactly like me. The same facial structure, the same features, the same everything. That's when the stranger whispered 7 words that changed my life forever. I don't think your mother is. About an hour into the flight, before the photograph, before the revelation, something else had happened that I didn't understand until much later. Turbulence hit us hard, the kind that makes people grip their armrests and hold their breath. I reached for my coffee, and my sleeve slid back, exposing my wrist. The woman beside me suddenly froze completely, her eyes locked onto something specific, a small crescent-shaped birthmark near my wrist, something I'd had my entire life and never given a second thought to. But her reaction was immediate and visceral, almost like she'd been struck by lightning. She looked frightened, genuinely frightened, like I'd just revealed some kind of secret that was never supposed to be seen. Then she looked out the window and didn't speak for 20 minutes. That was my first warning that something was incredibly wrong, though I didn't understand what at the time. When the flight attendant handed back our boarding passes after dealing with a gate issue, the woman glanced down at my pass. She saw my full name, Harper Parker. Something changed in her face in that moment. Real, visible, undeniable change. Color drained from it like someone had pulled a plug. It wasn't curiosity I saw there. It was fear. Genuine bone-deep fear. And suddenly, I wasn't the only one paying attention anymore. Twice during those final minutes before landing, she opened her mouth like she was going to say something important. Twice she stopped herself, closing her mouth and looking away. By then, I was becoming genuinely uncomfortable. This woman wasn't acting crazy or unstable. She was acting like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump or walk away. The captain announced our descent, and passengers started the familiar ritual of preparing to land, putting away laptops, putting phones in airplane mode, adjusting seatbacks to their upright positions. Then the woman turned toward me completely, making full eye contact for the first time during the entire flight, and quietly said, "I'm sorry because people don't usually start normal conversations this way." Then she asked, "Was your mother Linda Parker?" Every muscle in my body froze solid. Nobody had ever guessed my mother's name just by looking at me. Nobody. I stared at her in complete shock. "How do you know my mother?" I asked, my voice barely steady. The woman's hands began trembling visibly. She looked down at her lap like she couldn't make eye contact, then whispered something that would echo through my mind for weeks to come. "Because I spent 30 years hoping I'd find you." And suddenly, nothing felt normal anymore. She reached into her purse with this careful, deliberate slowness, like she was handling something sacred and fragile. Then she pulled out an old photograph. The picture was faded, clearly from the early 90s. A newborn baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. A woman stood beside the crib crying, tears streaming down her face. And another woman stood behind her watching the entire scene. I recognized that second woman immediately. It was my mother. My heart stopped. I flipped the photograph over with shaking hands. There was handwriting on the back in what looked like a woman's cursive. A date. My birth year. My birth month. My birth week. Not close. Exact. Then I noticed something else written underneath in the same handwriting. Just Baby A, no name. No Harper, no Parker. Just baby A. The woman watched my reaction carefully, like she already knew exactly what was coming next, and she was waiting to see how I'd handle it. Then she finally introduced herself. "My name is Marianne Cole," she said quietly. I nodded slowly, trying to process everything that was happening, trying to make sense of a situation that made absolutely no sense. Then she said something that made my heart literally stop beating for a moment. "My sister gave birth the same night your mother did," she said. Silence. Long, heavy, profound silence filled the space between us. Then she added, "Only one family left with a baby." The plane touched down on the tarmac, but neither of us moved. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure who I really was. Not in some philosophical sense, but in the most literal way possible. The woman sitting beside me had just suggested that I might not be who I thought I was, that my entire identity might be built on a lie. Neither of us went straight to baggage claim like normal passengers. Instead, Marianne and I ended up sitting in a quiet airport cafe, the kind of place where nobody pays attention to what anyone else is doing. I wasn't entirely sure why we did that. Maybe because I needed answers and she seemed to have them. Maybe because she looked like she'd been carrying this secret, this burden, for years, and finally couldn't keep it inside anymore. The moment we sat down, she slid the photograph across the table toward me. "I've carried that picture for 30 years, she said, and I believed her completely. The edges were worn smooth from being handled too many times, from being taken out and looked at and put away again, hundreds of times over 3 decades. For the first time, Marianne said her sister's name out loud. "Rebecca Cole," she said. She smiled sadly, a smile that contained decades of grief. "She was 24 when she got pregnant," Marianne continued. Then the smile disappeared completely. She never stopped talking about her baby. Something in her voice made my chest tighten, made it hard to breathe. Because this wasn't a woman chasing a fantasy or clinging to some false hope. This was grief. Old grief. The kind that never leaves, that you carry with you forever, that shapes every decision you make and every day you live. According to Marianne, Rebecca went into labor at a small private clinic outside Denver. Complications happened during delivery. Serious complications. Rebecca was heavily sedated, unconscious, unable to protect herself or her child. Hours later, a doctor told her the baby hadn't survived. No baby, no funeral. No goodbye. Just a short explanation and paperwork. At least that's what everyone believed. Marianne stared into her coffee for a long moment, then quietly said, "My sister asked for a death certificate." I frowned, thinking about how that seemed like a reasonable request. "Didn't she get one?" I asked. Marianne shook her head slowly. "No," she said. That single word changed everything because even I knew that wasn't normal. Dead babies get death certificates. That's just how the system works. That's protocol. The fact that Rebecca didn't get one meant something had gone wrong. Very wrong. The more Marianne talked, the stranger the story became. Rebecca claimed she heard a baby crying after the doctor told her the child was gone. A baby crying. Not in her imagination. Not from medication or shock or grief. She heard an actual baby crying. Nobody believed her. Not the nurses. Not her family. Not even her husband at the time. Everyone blamed the medication she'd been given, blamed shock, blamed grief, blamed anything except the obvious, that maybe, just maybe, Rebecca was telling the truth. But Rebecca never changed her story. Not once. Not in all the years that followed. Then Marianne asked me a question that seemed simple but made everything click into place. "What date do you celebrate your birthday?" she asked. I told her. Immediately she looked away. My stomach dropped like I was in free fall because she wasn't surprised by my answer. She was disappointed. She'd been hoping I would say something different. Then she whispered, "That's not the date Rebecca wrote down." By now, Marianne knew things she absolutely shouldn't know. My mother's name, my birth year, my exact birthday, my birthmark. And then she quietly said something that made my coffee cup feel heavy in my hands. "Your mother's maiden name was Linda Harrison." I nearly dropped the cup entirely because very few people knew that detail. Almost nobody. And suddenly I realized something fundamental had shifted. This woman wasn't guessing. She wasn't speculating or hoping or throwing things at the wall to see what stuck. She knew. She actually knew. I left the cafe and stepped outside into the Denver afternoon, my hands shaking. Then I called my mother. She answered immediately, her voice warm and familiar. "Harper," she said. Her voice sounded normal, comfortable, safe, for about 5 seconds. Then I asked, "Mom, have you ever heard of Marianne Cole?" Silence. Complete, absolute, deafening silence on the other end of the line. And suddenly I wasn't talking to the same woman anymore. The warmth had evaporated. Mom didn't sound angry. That would have made more sense, would have been easier to handle. She sounded scared, really scared, terrified even. Then she asked, "Where are you?" Not, "Who is Marianne?" Not, "Why are you asking?" Just, "Where are you?" That frightened me more than any answer could have. I told her about the flight, the photograph, the entire conversation with Marianne. Then came a long pause, long enough for me to hear her breathing, rapid and shallow. Finally she said, "Harper, some people spend their lives inventing stories." Then she hung up. Seconds later, I tried calling back. No answer. I tried again. No answer. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My messages weren't delivering anymore. For the first time in my life, my mother had blocked me, and I couldn't stop wondering why. I stared at my phone in disbelief. My mother had never blocked me before. Not after arguments. Not after disagreements. Not after anything. Yet 30 minutes after I mentioned Marianne Cole, I couldn't reach her anymore. That wasn't denial. That was panic. And panic usually has a reason. An hour later, my father texted me. He didn't call. He texted, "Do not meet with that woman again." That was it. No explanation, no questions, no expression of concern for what I'd just experienced. I typed back immediately, "Why?" His reply came almost instantly. "Because she wants something." I read that message 3 times because it sounded rehearsed. Like he'd already discussed it with Mom and they'd agreed on what to say to me. Like they'd been preparing for this possibility, waiting for it to arrive. That evening, Marianne sent me an email. Attached were scanned copies of old letters, dozens of them. Letters her sister Rebecca had written over the years. Some addressed to hospitals, some to lawyers, some to government offices, all asking the same question: what happened to her baby? And every single letter ended without an answer. Just silence, just rejection, just the void. Halfway through the stack of letters, one sentence stopped me cold and made my hands shake. The baby had a small crescent-shaped mark near her wrist. I looked down at my arm at the birthmark I'd ignored my entire life, never thinking it was significant, never realizing it would become the physical proof of a truth someone had tried to bury. My throat went dry because that detail was never public. It was never shared with anyone. Nobody knew about it except my immediate family. And Rebecca wrote it down 30 years ago. How could she possibly know about a birthmark on a baby she'd only held for minutes before being told the child had died? The next morning, Marianne called me. "I found someone," she said, and my pulse jumped immediately. A retired nurse. One who worked at the clinic during the year you were born. According to Marianne, the woman was still alive, still living outside Denver. And for years, decades actually, she had refused every interview request, turned away every reporter, refused to speak to everyone until now. She was willing to talk to us. 3 days later, we met her. Her name was Evelyn Grant. She was 78 years old, with a sharp memory and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. The moment she saw my face, something changed in her expression. Not recognition, regret. Deep, profound regret. Then she whispered, "You have Rebecca's eyes." A chill ran through my entire body, because in that moment, I knew this was real. This wasn't a conspiracy or a fantasy or a misunderstanding. This was the truth. Evelyn explained that the clinic shut down years later after multiple complaints, missing files, questionable procedures, families asking questions, and doctors blaming paperwork errors. But one case always haunted her. The night 2 women delivered baby girls. The same night I was supposedly born. According to Evelyn, Rebecca wasn't the only mother there that night. Linda Parker was there too, my mother. Evelyn looked directly at me, then quietly said, she desperately wanted a child. The room fell silent, because for the first time, my mother's name wasn't appearing beside a coincidence. It was appearing inside the story itself. She wasn't a bystander or a random person in the wrong place. She was central to what happened that night. Evelyn remembered something strange about the clinic's procedures. Each newborn received a file number. Sequential, organized, routine. Complete order and documentation. Except one file vanished. One number disappeared completely. No explanation, no record, no replacement. Just a gap where the information should have been. And somehow that missing number matched the date I was born. Before we left, Evelyn handed Marianne a small cardboard box. She'd kept it for decades, never telling anyone, never showing it to reporters or lawyers. Inside were old notes, shift schedules, memos, photographs, the kind of things nobody thinks matter until years later, until they become the only evidence of something that was supposed to stay hidden forever. Then I found a photograph, a different one, taken inside the clinic itself. Rebecca was in a wheelchair, crying, looking toward a nursery window. and standing in the background watching her was my mother, Linda Parker. Not smiling, not comforting anyone, just watching. For the first time in my life, I started wondering if my mother knew far more than she'd ever admitted, far more than she'd ever told me. I flew back to Denver 2 days later. The entire flight felt different from the first one because I was no longer searching for answers. I was searching for confrontation. Because 30 years earlier, 2 women had entered the same clinic. One left believing her baby died, the other left with me, and somehow my mother expected those facts to never collide. She was wrong. The moment I arrived home, I went looking, not for evidence, for answers. Our house had a small attic above the garage. Mom stored everything there, old boxes, holiday decorations, family albums, memories, and maybe secrets. I started opening containers one by one, my heart pounding harder with each box I opened. 3 hours later, I found it. A yellow baby blanket folded carefully inside a storage box. My hands froze because the blanket looked identical to the one in Marianne's photograph. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe not. Then I noticed something stitched into the corner of the blanket in delicate embroidery. R.C. Rebecca Cole. Beneath the blanket sat an envelope. Old, yellowed, sealed years ago. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Every single one addressed to Linda Parker. Every single one signed Rebecca. My stomach dropped because Mom hadn't told the truth. She knew Rebecca existed. She knew this entire time. I sat on the attic floor reading letter after letter, my vision blurring from tears I didn't even realize were falling. Rebecca begging for information, asking questions, describing dreams about her daughter, promising she'd never stop looking. One letter was opened, then another, meaning Mom had read them, all of them, and never responded, never reached out, never acknowledged the pain of a woman who was searching for her child. That night, I confronted my father. For the first time, he didn't deny anything. He looked exhausted, defeated, like he'd been carrying this weight for decades and couldn't hold it anymore. Then quietly, he said, "I thought the adoption was legal." The word hit me like a physical blow. Adoption, he said. Not birth, not daughter, adoption. He'd never used that word before, not once. In my entire life, he'd never used that specific word. Dad finally admitted what happened. 30 years earlier, he and Mom desperately wanted a child. The clinic offered a private arrangement. Fast, confidential, no waiting lists, no agencies, no questions asked. Dad paid cash, a lot of cash. Then he was told paperwork would arrive later. It never did. And somehow, they convinced themselves not to ask questions. They convinced themselves it was fine. It was normal. Everything was above board and legal. But Dad revealed something even worse. Years later, Mom discovered Rebecca's letters. She learned the baby she raised might not have been legally adopted at all. She learned another woman was searching. Another mother, another family, and she chose silence. Every year for decades. Every single year. That choice changed everything. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Mom opened the door. The moment she saw my face, the moment she saw what I was holding, she knew. I held up Rebecca's letters. The yellow blanket, the photograph from the clinic. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then tears filled her eyes, and she whispered the words I'd been waiting to hear. I knew. Everything inside me went cold because after weeks of questions, I finally had my answer. And now I needed the whole truth. Mom sat down before I could say another word. She looked smaller somehow, older. Not because of age, but because of guilt. Because of shame. Because of 30 years of carrying a secret that was now standing in front of her in the form of her daughter. She looked smaller somehow, older. Not because of age, because of guilt. For 30 years she'd carried a secret, and now it was standing in front of her. She repeated, "I knew." Then she started crying. Not dramatic tears, the kind that come from knowing there are no more places left to hide. The kind that come from the depths of your soul when you finally have to face what you've done. According to Mom, she didn't know the truth at first. When the clinic called, she believed everything was legal. She believed everything they told her. The doctors told her a young mother couldn't keep her baby, that arrangements had been made, that the child needed a home, that she was doing a good thing by providing that home. She wanted to believe it, so she did, until Rebecca's first letter arrived, then another, and suddenly she knew something was wrong. "What happened after the letters came?" I asked, and my voice barely sounded like my own. Mom looked down. Long silence. Then she answered with one word. Afraid. One word. One decision. One lifetime of consequences. Because every year after that, she chose silence again and again and again. Then Mom revealed something I wasn't prepared to hear. "Rebecca came to our house once. she said. Actually came. My heart stopped. What? Mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knocked on the door. The room spun because all these years I'd imagined Rebecca searching from far away, not standing outside my home, not close enough to touch the door. Rebecca wasn't angry. She wasn't screaming or demanding anything. According to Mom, she simply asked questions. Asked if there had been a mistake. Asked if anyone would speak with her. Asked if she could see me. I was 6 years old at the time, playing inside that house only a few feet away from the door. Close enough that I could have heard her voice if Mom had opened it. But Mom never opened the door. That truth hurt more than anything else. A week later, I met Marianne again. This time, there were no photographs. No theories. No mysteries. Only truth. We completed a DNA test together, then waited the longest 3 weeks of my life. Part of me hoped Marianne was wrong. Part of me already knew she wasn't. The results arrived on a Thursday morning. I opened them alone, hands shaking, heart pounding. One line changed everything. Close biological relationship confirmed. Marianne wasn't a stranger. She was my aunt. My biological aunt. And just like that, 30 years of assumptions disappeared. Linda Parker wasn't my biological mother. Neither was Dad my biological father. My entire origin story changed in a single sentence. A month later, Marianne handed me something she'd protected for years. Rebecca's final letter, the last one she ever wrote. I opened it carefully, knowing I was about to read the words of a woman I'd never met, but who had searched for me my entire life. Inside was a message written before she died. Not angry, not bitter, hopeful. One sentence shattered me completely. If my daughter is alive, tell her I never stopped looking. I cried harder than I had since this journey began. Because for the first time, I knew the truth. I wasn't abandoned. I was lost. There's a difference. Being abandoned means someone gave up on you. Being lost means someone was still searching, still hoping, still trying to find you. That changes everything. People assume I cut Linda out of my life. I didn't. Life isn't that simple. She raised me, read bedtime stories to me, helped me with homework, sat with me through fevers and heartbreaks, drove me to school and celebrated my victories. Those memories were real. But so was Rebecca. So was Marianne. So is the truth. And I refused to erase one woman to protect another. For the first time, the story belonged to me, not to the people who hid it. A year after that flight, I visited Rebecca's grave. I brought yellow flowers and the photograph Marianne carried for 30 decades. I sat there for a long time talking to someone who never got the chance to hear my voice. Then I thanked her, not because she found me, but because she never stopped trying. The woman who sat beside me on that flight didn't destroy my life. She restored it. She gave me back a missing chapter nobody thought I'd ever read. My mother believed this secret would stay buried forever. Instead, it crossed the country in seat 14B and landed beside me. Because sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with sirens or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it arrives as a stranger carrying an old photograph and a promise made by a mother who never stopped looking. Sometimes the truth arrives quietly, but when it does, it changes everything. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how it's supposed to happen. Because now I know who I really am. I'm the daughter Rebecca never stopped searching for. I'm the niece Marianne protected for 3 decades. I'm the person who was lost but finally found her way home. And that makes all the difference.